Going live. One second. Okay, so we are live.
All right, I think we might be live.
Yes, we are live.
Okay. All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode here on What's the Tea. This is our weekly conversations with staff members and people who work with South Suburban Family Shelter about what's going on. So we're doing this at 2 p.m. This is the finale of 2020, and we're lucky to have Jennifer once again, a recurring guest, our executive director. So Jennifer, thank you for being with us again.
Happy to be here always.
And so we want to look at kind of a year in review a little bit. I'm going to try to avoid, all the cliches that we've been hearing all year, but I don't think I'll completely avoid it. It's been a year for everyone. It kind of goes without saying, but as everyone's coming in, I would just like to ask Jennifer, maybe just to start, how do you think our agency has grown from this 2020 year?
Yeah, it's I think it's Carrie who I keep saying, like, what a decade 2020 has been. So we're looking forward to 2021. Everybody knows that. I think it's been amazing how we've grown this year. I think some things are a little bit hard to put the finger on, but when I stop and think about it, I think as an agency, we've really grown in terms of how we manage change because we had no choice at all whatsoever. And some of our programs have just completely changed. They're just totally different. And it was really impressive how we all came together as an agency and we just did what we needed to do, right? So back in March, we got the orders to stay home, and it was such a stressful time. I don't really remember much of March and April, to be perfectly honest. There was actually a moment at some point in May where I realized I didn't pay my electric bill for 2 months. And I do the electronically, like I get the emails and stuff and I do it. And the emails were sitting there like totally unopened. My whole life was a blur. I was completely freaked out that I had done that. Um, but our agency, we just did it. And I don't know what words to put to that, but we kind of, leadership said, here's what we need to do. And everyone just said, okay. And it was just like, that part, I think, was confirmation of growth that we had done as an agency up to that point, right? That we had built enough of a team, and there was enough trust in each other to just go ahead and do what needed to be done. But what happened next in each individual program was everyone then sort of like took this directive of here's what we need to do for health and safety, and then they just recrafted their programs and did things with that, like this, like, this is a good example. What's the TSSF? No one told you guys to do this. No one put anything out there to the community education program, but programs like yours and others sat together and said, okay, here's what we have to deal with. What are we going to do? And people just came up with like such amazing ideas. So I feel like that ability to adapt to change is a huge place that we grew. And then this idea of ingenuity of sort of like, all right, we're going to go this way now. We've got some restrictions on how we used to do things, and it seemed to open up this whole other doorway for people to think differently in some pretty incredible ways.
Absolutely. Especially as you were saying, this is our 33rd episode, I believe, and it is hard to keep straight, as you were saying, the timeline of like March and April, like what information we knew, what did we our expectations maybe were that this was going to be temporary, but
Mhm.
at the same time, I can remember our program, the community education program, we kind of got a plan together that was going to happen regardless of where the year was going to take us. So um, definitely appreciate that. So do you have, when you look back on 2020, what kind of memories will you have, or just from working from home, from all these changes? What do you think we'll remember about this year?
Well, we know what everybody's house looks like right now. We know everyone's pets and everyone's kids and those moments where we've all had like, okay, I'm gonna turn the video on for the video meeting, even though I don't feel video ready. So I think that there's like a whole new level of humanness that we've been exposed to with everyone. I think what is so interesting about everything that has happened is I know prior to COVID happening, I was in a place where I was really, I mean, obviously coming here, it's a long commute. I was feeling pretty disconnected from my family, and I was feeling like I really just wasn't seeing my kid enough, and really feeling like, my husband was being the primary caregiver, which I'm so fortunate to have a partner that can do that. But I still wanted to be that person that felt like the primary caregiver. And then COVID came, and all of a sudden I was back to being the primary caregiver. And I was like, wait a minute, that's not what I meant. So there's one of the things, of course, that I'm going to remember is like I ended up having a personal need fulfilled in the middle of this crisis. Had this like incredible opportunity to be able to spend more time with my family and my son in a way that I never dreamed was going to be possible um, before. And maybe for other people, things I just think that there's those unexpected things that came out of it.
Yeah, I like that a lot, to look at some of the positives. For myself, I felt like I was kind of running on fumes, but just between work and school and different responsibilities. So that slowdown and just being in one single place, um, despite all the bad things happening and all the kind of the chaos surrounding us, there are positives as well.
Yeah, I think that this year has made a lot of people stop and reflect in ways that we really needed to, but couldn't figure out how to create those circumstances in the way our life was going. And I hope that people can figure out what things to keep, from what happened now, and get sort of some clarity on what are the things that are really important to make sure that you have and keep in your life. I think that it kind of opened the possibilities for people to do that on a personal level. And I think, you know, somewhat organizationally as well. Like, what are those things that you've held on to at work because you think that's how work is supposed to be? Well, when that got thrown out of the window and work couldn't be that way anymore, what might we hold on to about the way that we do our work?
Yeah, I felt that with our prevention program. You know, we're always just going from one school to the next because as it had been, we had just had a steady stream of contacts. We had a lot of relationships with schools, so we were always on to the next thing, but we never really had that chance to look at everything we do with no rush and just to look at our presentation and what can be improved. So I found a lot of benefit of that, and really can't wait to get back out there with some of our changes. But you're the executive director, and thinking about this whole year, it's you have limited information, and yet you still have to be at the head of the agency. So, what have you learned as a leader throughout this year?
Um, yeah, well, that's sure true. What you're saying, we know this much, and you still have to do everything it is that you have to do. So I think, that having the confidence to take risks, as a leader, you have to take risks because the agency, like you said, the agency has to move forward no matter what. So, it's March 16th and there's a stay-at-home order and we have to do something about it. How is the agency going to function during a stay-at-home order when we don't really know what's going on? And I'll repeat what I've said on here many times, is that I do not do it by myself. So that's right. One of the learnings of a leader is that it cannot happen alone. So having to have a strong team around you and knowing who you can go to and lean on for that support and that shared decision making. And I might have one piece of the pie, and who are the people that are going to have the other pieces of the pie that I need to talk to? You know, that's a huge thing that I think that I've always known, but really was reinforced this year. But one of the things in thinking about this episode this year has really made me reflect, and as a leader really lean into that idea of what does it mean to be a trauma-informed organization, because we always know that we're working in a field of trauma, but not always have we been right in the middle experiencing a trauma alongside everyone that we serve with our community. We've had many of our staff have lost people to COVID-19, and that's been traumatic for them. In the midst of the COVID-19 trauma, a lot of the media focus on racialized murders and harassment have been extremely damaging to our community, because our community primarily serves people of color, and many of our staff are people of color who the rest of the world is sort of expecting that you're going to get up and go to work and act like everything's okay when it's not. When you see someone who looks like you on TV being brutalized in the morning, you're supposed to just hop on a Zoom call. You know, so it's that has been one of the biggest things that I have really had to steep myself in. How do we do this amidst everything that we're experiencing?
Yeah, and I can only speak for myself, of course, but you know, you've done a lot of direct messages to our entire staff, and you've done you know, short videos like 10 minutes or less or so, and I find it really helpful, and I really appreciate when we get these direct lines of communication from the leadership in the organization, just to kind of be aware and, as you said, trauma informed about kind of the greater context of what, you know, what's going on in between our workday. So again, with everything that happened with the protest and the civil unrest and the brutality, it's another thing that was completely unexpected that we had to respond to. So as far as trauma goes, with everything that's happened, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this, because it's on a greater level. Is there a name for that when everyone co-experiences that at the same time, or how do you think about that?
I call it collective trauma. So that's like, you know, it's happening to everyone. And then you're right, there's so many different levels. So there's this collective global trauma that we're experiencing with COVID-19, but there's also then right in the middle of it, there's this vein of historical and generational trauma that's related in a couple of different ways. So not just with seeing all of the murders and the harassment that have been highlighted, particularly to people of color, but with COVID-19, as we learned, having a really disproportionate impact on people of color and communities of color. So that is like, again, another double whammy. Like it's, you know, here's this collective trauma, but then there's a piece of the trauma that I'm not experiencing, right? Because I'm not one who also is then having this historical generational traumatic piece as part of my life. And that is then collective within some certain specific communities. So it's just, and I'm glad to see people paying more attention to it, but I'm also just, I'm noticing what had to happen for people to pay attention to it and start to lift up and get more active. And it's just it's always just sad that that you sort of have to, it has to be on TV. Like you have to see these horrible atrocities in order to get fired up about it when they've been happening for hundreds of years.
Yeah, absolutely. And adding on top of, as you said, the pandemic stress, which was happening, in everyone's mind right before that. So yeah, again, what a crazy year. But
But
I
I have to say that I continue to be proud to the way South Suburban Family Shelter responds. Like I think even, everyone responded to how we needed to change for COVID-19. But then at the moment, when it all sort of came to head when George Floyd was murdered, our agency really, at least to me, from my perspective, we're on the same page with the way that we responded. There wasn't at any point where I felt like I needed to go back and check the temperature and see if everybody was, thinking and feeling the same thing. Like I, was able to put messages out that people supported. And that is something that I'm really proud of at our agency, that everyone's just like, yes, this is important. And yes, we have a part to play in this. And, this person's going to say it. And then, you did one of your lunch lectures and talked about the school to prison pipeline. And I was so proud of the things that you talked about because I was like, yes, I believe that too. And so it was just nice to see that like that proof that it's in multiple places and we're putting out a message that is in sync, with each other.
Yeah, and I think this year was a huge opportunity to, practice what we preach because, we trauma informed care has been really on at least our mind since I've worked here. I've been here for 2 years, and this was really the opportunity to put it into action and talk about it when it's happening. So, and as you were saying, like checking the temperature, but like in our team meetings and some of these smaller meetings that we've had, where just had really good conversations about, the greater context of what's going on in our work. So um, it was, I really found a lot of my coworkers to be really thoughtful about um, how we approach everything. So it it was nice to have that support from everyone. But looking forward to 2021, I know you had your
That's
glasses
what I
on
had.
earlier, so maybe we need to bring them back.
I think we do.
So we talked a lot about last year. What are we looking forward to for the next year? I know there's still that whole side of unpredictability, but any thoughts on that?
Right. Well, we're looking forward to moving past COVID, at some point for it to, go away and be able to really, resume um services in a little bit more of our traditional way. Like we really want to see each other. That's what I'm looking forward to. We want to see each other. Um, we want to see our clients, which really helps to reestablish the connection and the relationship in a way that is most useful for us. But then also, I think that is when we have that opportunity to say, okay, here are the things that we learned, and here are the things that we want to keep from how we had to do our business differently. So we have, pretty much everybody has the ability to work remotely. Well, so what will that continue to look like for us, right? To be able to, again, stop and say, what does that mean then for our workforce if we have that capability now that we didn't have before? What did we learn about supports that we provided to clients that maybe we hadn't thought about providing before, and we're going to keep those? So I really just think that it's going to strengthen the way that we do our work because, again, it forced us to think outside the box a little bit. And I want to figure out how to hold on to that. I really want to somehow figure out how we can hold on to whatever it was that allowed people to just think about things totally different, because I think that's where the magic can be, and that's where I want to see the agency. We have to be able to be flexible and nimble to move forward and continue to meet people where they're at and meet the issues where they're at. So allowing people to do that, to think about the work and the way that we do it in the way that fits the moment the best.
Yeah, I was just thinking about prevention and just the flexibility that we have to have. And like in the past, we would have never said, "Oh, we'll do something over Zoom or anything like that." But just not being caught up with what we've done so far and really just what can we do now given the circumstances. Um, I'm hoping with schools and everything that will they'll be more accepting of virtual presentations and our flexibility as well as they're trying to figure out how they're going to look day to day in the schools.
Yeah,
So
that'll be interesting. They've had to, oh, the poor schools. I couldn't possibly get my son's teacher enough flowers. There aren't enough in the world for everything that she has had to do to figure out how to work with the kids this year. I'm really looking forward to the kids being able to be together full time and socialize and kind of get back to the business of being kids.
yeah, I can only imagine. We're just on the outside of it a little bit. When we make a decision as a team, it's just us as adults, and schools have, you know, they have to figure out what they're doing and then communicate it with all the kids and the parents. So um, I think a lot more people will be ready to go. So I do want to give everyone an opportunity on Facebook to ask us some questions. Not sure if anyone has any so far. How are we looking, Angie?
So as of right now, we do not have any questions, but we do have someone that said they love the glasses, Jenny. So that is the one comment that we have right now.
Yeah, we're all really looking forward to getting rid of 2020. I mean, and I'm aware that, there's not a magic wand that January 1st is going to make it be a completely different, day, but I see people kind of getting into that mindset of positivity and hopefulness. And so, I feel like that's a really strong place to be and direction to take it, seeing that there's light at the end of the tunnel and, you know, we can do this.
Yeah, it just seemed like
Have a-
a year that never ended. Oh, go. Did you have some?
Sorry. Yeah. So we do have a question. Someone asked, how did Adopt a Family go?
Hmm. Adoptive Family didn't skip a beat, which is kind of amazing. It went perfectly and flawlessly, and our donors had adopted 34 families, which I believe were all the families that we had that needed to be adopted, which that was 80 individuals between adults and children that made up all of those families. And if anyone ever comes into the admin office during Adopt a Family, you can't find the staff because there's gifts like absolutely everywhere in the office. The front of the office is full. The offices have gifts all over the place. People did not diminish their generosity at all. So it was fantastic, which is pretty much what we've seen this year. People really paid attention to what was going on at the agency, and our individual donors and our in-kind donors have been very consistent this year, and really thoughtful about how they're going to support our mission, which is exactly what we need. We have some dedicated funding sources, but we have some funding sources that have kind of gone away this year because there's certain things that we might have charged for that we weren't able to charge for. Some fees, we weren't able to have the event the way that we normally have the event, and we have increased costs that some of our funding just doesn't cover. So it's interesting. I always think that sometimes some people forget that a nonprofit is a business, and there are certain things that are required to run a business, and most of our formalized grants don't really support all of that. So we're constantly in need of our community to support us, and they continue to come through and really see that, the whole organization needs to be supported, and us to enable us to meet that specific mission with a client.
You actually were getting into the next question. So our second question is, has the community remained committed to supporting South Suburban Family Shelter? And what about monetarily?
Yeah, so they have remained committed, and I think and they've really been more committed. Like that community commitment has increased monetarily. Our individual donations are up. We recently put out our annual appeal, which is a letter that we send to people that are on our list of supporters, and we send it out in email also. And those donations are really like flowing in December. This is when all of us nonprofits do it. Like, we get to the year end, and if you're on any nonprofit mailing list, then you've got 20 different people asking you to give donations, which I'm very aware of. So I know how amazing it is that people choose South Suburban Family Shelter to donate to, because they have all sorts of choices that they could make where they want to invest their funds and what missions they want to support. And we've definitely seen people coming up and supporting them, and we're always surprised. I don't know why. Like, every day we're like, oh, we got all this, money, and we're so excited that people are investing in the work that we do. It's nice to see other people believing in how important this mission is, and saying, some of them literally say this when they, we know that you do good work and we want to support you. And it's so great to see, because that's what our staff does. They're some of the most committed people that you could find.
So we actually have another one. So it says Mackenzie Scott just donated a ton of money to various nonprofits. If you received a $1 million gift, what would you do with it? What are your dreams for South Suburban Family Shelter?
If I received a $1 million gift, so there's a couple of priorities that we would probably look at with a $1 million gift. One of the priorities would be making sure that our buildings are in good repair. So we own all of our buildings that we have. So some of you all might not know that we own 3 buildings, and buildings require upkeep. That can be very expensive, and it's difficult to find money for that. So we would do that. We have a long-term goal to compensate our staff appropriately and fairly. So if we had some unrestricted money, we would absolutely put that towards making sure that our staff are compensated in the way that they ought to be and deserve to be. That's a long-term goal that we've been shooting for. So those are the first 2 things that come to my mind. Would be able to accomplish a couple of those things. And we have some ideas for how we want to build out programming, but those are ongoing things. So potentially, maybe leveraging some of that to say, here's how we want to build out this program, and it's going to cost us this much to get started, but we need this much to keep it going on the long term. So we could potentially look at that angle as well. That was a fun question.
That was a really fun question. And as of now, that is all.
All right. Thank you, Angie. Maybe someone who has a spare million hanging around will see this video and no, that's what we do.
Right. I got to tell you, that's one of the things that I think coming to an agency as an executive director that probably you're not always thinking about is the cost of maintaining facilities, and just like the idea of maintaining the facilities. You're always so focused on the mission, but then the buildings around you, you have to care for those too and make sure that they're kept up, which is just, it's just a whole other side of things, that facilities piece.
Yeah, absolutely. It didn't jump to my mind when I heard that question. I was thinking along the lines of programs, but that does make a lot of sense. We need buildings to function before we can do our jobs effectively.
Well, yeah, it's that stuff that people don't think about. And then, and that's what and so I'm always thinking, like, if our programs are going to function the best, our staff need to be cared for as best as we can care for them. So that's my mind goes to, if I have really happy staff, I'm going to have really happy clients.
Yeah, absolutely. And just the stress that comes with the job, and the better off everyone is. You know, financially is definitely part of it, but also just, personally, emotionally, the better we're able to help other people. You have to help yourself first, of course.
Yeah. But before I ask you to do more, I need to take care of you.
So those were most of my questions for today. I did want to see if you had any acknowledgments, or you wanted to give any final words, because this is maybe your fifth time on here, but this is the big wrap up for the year.
I know. Well, I feel like I've said it a lot, but you probably can't thank people too much. I'm eternally thankful to our staff, which I try to say, and like you've mentioned, I have tried to express that often this year, and it's always in times where I kind of reflect on the state that I'm in, and I kind of feel like if I'm feeling a certain way, other people are feeling a certain way. So they that's my time when I choose to talk to people, when I'm thinking like everybody needs to hear that message. And thankful to our community that continue, like they just continue to show up. And I always tell people with utmost confidence that if there is anything that our clients need, we can put the ask out to our community, and I know that we'll get it within 24 hours. And people are like, really? And I'm like, absolutely. there's a there's a training that our state coalition does on advocacy, and there's this whole video that they show in the beginning about how this one particular survivor really just needs a washing machine, and in order to get herself together. And there's all these reasons why being able to have a functioning washing machine in her house will help her with some stability that then she can do some of her next steps for. And this whole thing about whether or not the agency can get her a washing machine. And I'm just like, I would have 20 washing machines if I put out the ask to our community supporters that we need a washing machine for a client. I would have 20 on my sidewalk by the end of the day. Like, I don't have the slightest bit of a doubt. And that's just to be able to know and have that confidence in your community. It's just priceless. Like, those are things that we don't have to worry about because we know that people will take care of that. And it's priceless to know that we have that. So, I mean, the amount of gratitude that I have experienced or felt, this year is just, in trying times, you notice it, I think, more and more, how many people stay there with you and follow you, and want to make sure that things are going as well as they can be going. So it's just been pretty amazing, to watch everyone, and some colleagues, and I hope that you all have colleagues that have done it, but I've had the fortunate opportunity to have colleagues that have been supportive, um, to be able to talk to and kind of reflect on the work of leadership and what is leadership like in a crisis, because it's a really difficult thing to do. So I've been really thankful, um, for all of that as well. And to our board of directors that has just been so supportive this year and really, listened to us within the organization to say, here are the things that we need right now. And every chance they can say, okay, they say, okay, this is what you need to do. Let's do it. Let's figure it out.
Yeah, I think I'll just also, thank my team for really banding together this year, and for everyone at the agency for clearly communicating with everyone, and again, banding together when we don't know what's going to happen next. I also wanted to thank all of our guests this year. We've had at least 20, 25. I know we've had recurring guests, but we couldn't really do the show with just the same four of our team every week. So had to thank them as well, and thank everyone for listening. I know there's definitely a handful of people that listen like every single week, and they drop comments and share our video. So that really helps us, and it's good to know that um, they like what we're putting out there.
Yeah, the videos have reached thousands upon thousands of people. They've been shared all over the place. So that's been really cool to see, you know, how wide we can go. And to kind of re-meet everyone on T has been fun because I know almost all the guests that we've had, but the way that you all have developed your interview skills and been so thoughtful about the questions you ask, I learn more about people every time I watch one. So that's been really cool.
Yeah, I agree. And, just working and we have different buildings and different locations. So I feel like I've almost gotten to know different programs better than ever before. So it was a great idea. I'll give the credit to Angie. I believe it was her original idea. And it's been a lot of fun. So thanks everyone for being here this year. Thank you again, Jennifer, for being a recurring guest. So we'll be back next Tuesday. It will be the same time and place, but it will be a different year and some different tea. So have a happy new year, everyone.
Happy New Year. Let me put them back on before we close out, Angie.